going on? HGR here. Today I want to talk about Contra. Every US release Contra, except where there weren't any US releases, but I'm going to go through every game in the series. There were 13 physical releases, 5 digital only games, and 3 games that were canceled and never brought to light. So if you don't know every Contra, if you don't know everything about Contra, sit back, relax, grab something to drink, and I'll see if I can drop some knowledge on you. Talk about Contra, Super Contra, Operation C, Contra 3, both of his portable ports, Contra Force, Contra Hardcore, Contra Legacy of War, C, the Contra Adventure, Contra Shattered Soldier, Neo Contra, Contra 4, Contra Rebirth, Contra the World of Worlds, Hardcore Uprising, Contra Evolution, Contra Return. First up, for the original NES, Contra. Now the only difference between this one and the arcade version was a couple of backgrounds were removed and some cutscenes were removed. And also the Famicom version had a VRC2 chip which allowed it to keep those, and the North American version didn't have it, but you know, whatever, nobody really cares at this point. It's just one of the most iconic shoot 'em ups and running guns of all time, and basically set the standard for the entire series. Next up, Super C on the NES, which this was an arcade port, but to me the NES version was better than the arcade port. And what this did, they took away the upgradable weapons that the arcade version had, but they added 3 new stages and a different final boss. So, and again, they took everything that wasn't broke with the original Contra and didn't try to fix it. So it was one hell of a sequel to the original Contra. Plays very similar to the original Contra. Next up, Operation C on the Game Boy. Now, this was the first mobile Contra and the first Contra to introduce the homing gun. And it plays very much like Super C, and just a very good Contra experience even on the Game Boy with this little screen. You can still play it pretty good. You know, today, you know, we have the Game Boy player and all kinds of other ways to play this. It's still a very good Contra game. Contra 3, the Alien Wars for Super Nintendo, Game Boy, and Game Boy Advance. This was the first Contra for 16-bit consoles. The first Contra to allow for true weapon selectable and having smart bombs. It took advantage of the Super Nintendo's Mode 7 graphics to allow for the bike stages, the missile riding stages, and kind of push Contra to the edge where it's never been. And just probably one of my favorite Contras of all time. And they took the series to the next level, but still paid homage to the original Contra. It's just a really great shoot 'em up. Now these two are the ports of Contra 3 that came to the portable systems. First up, we have Contra the Alien Wars on the Game Boy, and it followed it very well to be an 8-bit system and to be like a clone, but they basically redid the game for it. They didn't just try to port it, they actually took the time and redid it. And then Contra Advance Alien Wars was a scaled down port of the 16-bit version where you only had one weapon, but other than that the gameplay was pretty much the same, and they're both of them excellent ports in their own right. By the way, I am going in order in which these games were released except for these 2 ports here. But as far as the main series, that's what I'm going in. Next up, Contra Force on the NES. Now this originally was not going to be a Contra game. It was called Arcount in Japan. And for whatever reason, Konami didn't finish it. They never released it in Japan. They kind of zipped it up, called it Contra Force, and dumped it on us. But it was the first Contra that had selectable characters with unique weapons. But it doesn't even look like a Contra game. Doesn't really even play like a Contra game, other than the explosions and maybe the bullets. So next up, Contra Hardcore on the Sega Genesis. This was the first Contra to come to a Sega console. Had like 4 selectable characters and alternate endings depending on how you did. And this Contra truly lives up to his name, Hardcore. Just when you're playing it, and you can select the wolf, and you just go through here. It has selectable stages where you can kind of choose your own destiny. Next up, Contra Legacy of War for the PlayStation and the Sega Saturn. Now this was the first Contra that Konami kind of outsourced to Appaloosa Interactive, and this was their first attempt at a 3D Contra. And this game was never released in Japan. It was canceled, probably for obvious reasons. This is one Contra I really can't stand playing these games. But they did come with a pair of 3D glasses, and I mean the power-ups are there. You know it's Contra, but I couldn't get used to this funky top-down view that the game had. Trying to play it, but if you get used to it, it's not that bad a game, but really not one of my favorite Contras. Next up, Contra the Sea Adventure. This one was also only released in North America. It's on the PlayStation. This was the second game, probably in the last game, I think, from Appaloosa Entertainment. And it was the only Contra game not to have a multiplayer. But it was a side-scroller. It played better than Legacy of War. But it's still, again, it didn't really have that Contra feel to it. But it is a pretty good game in its own right. So I do recommend checking this one out, but like I said, it's not really what you think of when you play Contra. Next up, Contra Shattered Soldier on the PS2. Now this actually started life as Contra Spirit 64 for the Nintendo 64. But for whatever reason they didn't finish it, and they ended up finishing it and releasing it on the PS2. Now this one features players with fixed weapon configuration, and the charge features allow you to blast up kind of like a Mega Man charge. And this one also has multiple endings depending on the player's performance. Next up on the PS2 is Neo Contra. Now this one I'm not a fan of at all. This was the first time they tried to do all overhead stages, and I was never a fan of the overhead stages in the original Contras. Except maybe Contra 3 because they didn't overdo it. But this one also has selectable weapons, and this was the first Contra to have tracking weapons. So you could actually lock in on the enemy and destroy him. But like I said, all overhead stages, and I'm really not that much of a fan of this game. But if you don't mind overhead stages, then it's not a bad game. And last up, Contra 4 on the DS. This is probably one of the best Contras around. If Contra, Super C, and Contra 3 got together and had a baby, this is the game that you would get right here. This is the first Contra to feature gameplay on multiple screens, had the grappling hook, and the playstyle is kind of modeled after Contra 3. And this has upgradable weapons from the arcade version of Super C. They brought those back. And it's also brought back the 3D tunnel stages from the original Contra. It plays a lot like Contra 3. And it was the 20th anniversary release from Contra, so I'm guessing they were trying to pay homage to all the originals, but also creating a new game. I think they did a really good job of it with this title. And just look at this game is awesome. Next up, the first digital Contra with no physical release was Contra Rebirth for the Wii. It's a 2D side-scrolling shooter. with hand-drawn sprites. And there's a rumor that Rebirth is going to be coming to the Switch, but I could do without that. But they say Gradius, Castlevania, Contra, and one other, they're going to bring the Rebirth series to the Switch. But there's another game in this list I'd much rather prefer they bring to the Switch than this one. It's kind of a little too cartoony for me. And this one was a Chinese only release, Contra World of Worlds. It's a cell phone mobile game. I don't know much about it other than it is Contra and it had a couple selectable weapons and pretty much just like a simple run and gun, but it is part of the Contra series. Now this one was a digital download and an arcade game. Contra, oh no, okay. Digital download only. Contra Hardcore Uprising. First Contra not to have Contra in the title, and it was a prequel to the original Contra. So it was digital download on the PS3 and Xbox 360. And this game's alright in its own right, but I'm really not a fan of this one either. But it is fun and can be very challenging. Now this game here, Contra Evolution. This one, if I was going to bring one to the Switch, it would be this. This was arcade and digital download on the PS3. And this was a remake of the original Contra with new characters and bonus stages. And this looks like Contra, plays like Contra, but modernized with new weapons and new features. And if I was going to bring one to the Switch, it'd be this one. Now the three canceled Contras were Super Contra on the Sega CD, Contra on the GameCube, and Contra for the 3DS. I didn't dig into why they weren't, but they weren't made. This is Contra Return. This is a mobile only game, and rumors about them bringing this to the US, but as of right now there's no release date, but it's a running gun similar to Contra Uprising. Alright guys, I appreciate you watching. I thank you all. Let me know in the comments below what you thought. If any other series you'd like me to cover, let me know. I'll catch y'all at the next one. Peace!